all the Chiefs quarterbacks and all the Chiefs draft picks will be arriving in St. Joseph next week, as well as a bunch of undrafted rookie free agents. Let's talk about a few of those guys.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory, presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our incredible partners possible here at KC Sports Network. We absolutely love working with them. I absolutely love working with this fine gentleman who is also sporting a backwards hat as I am, Matthew Lane.
Oh,
hi, Matty.
I don't wear forward-facing hats, so anytime I wear a hat, it's going to be backwards.
That is true. I don't know if I've ever seen you with
I look weird in a forward-facing hat, buddy. Can
we just try it on?
It doesn't work, man.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's
bad.
not me. I can't.
I don't like it.
I can't do a forward-facing hat. There's just no chance. What's going on? Nego? So yeah, I've always got a backwards hat on if I am rocking the hat. I'm glad you joined me today. I'm sad we don't have Craig back again for this one, but that's okay. We got to see him earlier. He is no longer with us on the show, but he's doing fine overall. I'm kind of excited. We got a nice show here where we're about to talk about the Chiefs undrafted free agent crop from this past offseason. And we're going to kind of see if we think any of those guys are going to make the roster before we get into previewing the lowly Cleveland Browns.
I do want to get into all of that for sure. I do have one question.
You're going to sidetrack us off the start. This is new. I like it.
I don't know if I'm allowed to use your wife's real name. I don't know. You're a private person.
Go ahead.
Does your wife like the backward hat look? Is she a fan of the backward hat?
Yes. Versus the front-facing hat? Yes.
Well, I am too. I just does the wife you like the backward hat?
Yeah, the backward hat works. I got a vibe. The backwards hat still fits my vibe right now. Maybe in 10 more years when I'm actually old, maybe I won't be able to pull it off. But for now, I'm young enough. It still works.
The wifey likes the backward hat look on me. Yes, we are still we're in our 30s still. I mean,
one of us.
I just got a text from a friend of the show, friend of KCSN and member of KCSN, Kevin Flaherty, saying, "Don't let Matty turn his hat around ever again."
I agree. I don't do it. I've tried every different kind of hat that you can possibly think of in every forward-facing manner. It just doesn't work, man. I can't do. There's nothing. I can't do the little. I can't do.
Oh, don't do that.
There's nothing.
The little side, the front hat with tilted to the side was a very.
I've tried,
2000,
buddy. Oh yeah, that's
2008 Matty right there.
The hair, no, never. The hair is real long right now, so just kind of try to set it on top of the hair. Nah.
No, I think you did right. I think you did the right.
It is what it is, man. I'm stuck here. This is my wheelhouse. I know it. Some people get mad. Our friend Bearcat gets real mad at me. I don't have the forward-facing hat. It doesn't. My hat like this serves apparently no purpose, according to people that don't like backwards-facing hats. It's not to block the sun out of my eyes this way. But you know what? We got to do what we got to do, Kent.
I feel like I can pull both off. Wifey likes the backward hat look, so I do rock the backward hat look from time to time. And that has been Hat Talk with Kent and Matty. I'm going to try to find you a hat that you can actually pull off front facing, though. Do you think you like a shorter bill?
I don't think so. I don't think it works. I don't know what it is. I can't pinpoint the issue, but it just doesn't work. I've done dad hats. I've had the country, I have a fish hook. The bill is so tilted that it's almost like a semicircle. Tried that. Tried every imaginable way. I cannot wear a forward facing hat. Couldn't tell you what it is.
We're going to work on that. We're going to work on that one, though. We're going to try it. We're going to find one. But
they try cowboy hat. They probably wear that forward.
I'm here for it. I'd like to see you. I'd like to see you try to pull it off. Anyways, thank you all so much for hanging out with us. Thank you all for enduring 4 minutes of hat chat, which is always just it's exhilarating. Nick Springer, producer Nick, suggesting a bucket hat.
Got one of those.
I've seen you wear a bucket hat. You do pull off a bucket hat.
Yeah, that's right.
You gotta understand, you also never wear sleeves. So bucket hat, no sleeves is a entire vibe that I've seen you pull off tremendously. So the big hats. What is that? Oh, the oversized, the oversized one?
I might be able to do that too. Okay. We got some options.
You would look extremely 5'7" in that. So,
oh no, I can't do that now.
anyways, I don't think any of those ginormous hats are going to be rolling into St. Joseph here in 6 days for check-in day. I think probably most of these players will be keeping it relatively low key. But we want to talk about some of these undrafted free agents. The Chiefs always have a few intriguing undrafted free agents every single year. It started with like a Nico Remigio last year, who was getting some interest before he got hurt. Cam Jones actually made the roster. Jack Conkrin the year before has made the roster. They've been able to find some undrafted free agent types, and they've been able to, to find one or two that winds up on the roster and good things happen. So we wanted to talk a little bit about it, at least just to kind of look at some of these players that might be of intrigue. Even Deneric Prince was kind of a fringe player last year too. But so Maddie, I just, we can just kind of go down the line. I'll start with one that I want to just kind of talk a little bit about because I do think he's intriguing. Carson Steele, the running back out of UCLA. Prior to UCLA, he was a uber productive player at Ball State. He's a very young prospect still. People don't realize that. He's still just 21 years old. So he's a younger draft, was a younger draft eligible player. He's on the younger side. Really productive in college. Held his own when he went to UCLA and played in the Pac-12. Has some ability as a pass protector. The athletic testing is probably the thing that kind of, kept him, and it's really the 40 time that, that kind of kept him from finding a spot on a team guaranteed with the draft or guaranteed money, at least with a draft selection. So I know we've talked about Carson Steele this offseason, but it's been a few months. Like, what do you think about him? Just to give people a refresher on your opinion of Carson Steele.
Yeah, so when you go back and watch him, I mean, you start with Ball State and you see him going up even against the best competition he's playing there, and I mean, he performs really well. He's obviously one of the better players on the field. And then when he goes and hits the transfer portal, and Craig and I got to sit down with him and talk to him, he told us that he picked UCLA because he liked the offense that Chip Kelly had. It was going to put him in a position to showcase the entire, everything he has in terms of his skills. He was going to catch the ball. He was going to get to run all these different types of zone runs. He was going to get to show out a lot more of what he can do. And not that he was bad for UCLA by any stretch, but I do think they went into a little bit more of a running back by committee. So I think he might have been white hot in terms of the production going into the transfer portal, coming out of, I think, a relatively disappointing year for the Bruins. I don't think his stock was at the absolute highest, but then he goes down to the Shrine Bowl. He has a pretty good week down there. He looks good in terms of catching the ball, picking up the pass protection stuff. And then unfortunately he doesn't get invited to the combine, and the pro day rolls around. He checks in, 6'1", 228 pounds, but then Kent kind of mentioned it. He goes ahead and runs a 4.77 40-yard dash. And that just won't cut it. That's even too slow for a big bruising running back. You were pretty much, the NFL says if you run that speed, you're not playing running back no matter what. You don't get to play running back at that size. So I think that was kind of limiting for him. And so now I think you kind of have to go through the concept, is he going to switch to fullback? Is he going to become a fullback? And at 228 pounds, that's kind of light for a fullback. That's actually really light for a fullback, at least versus most of the NFL. So he's in a little bit of this in-between spot right now because of the speed and the size that he's currently at.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen this team be willing to willing to keep a slower running back in the past if they can fit a role within the offense as a special teams player. I think about Darrell Williams as a slower back, a bigger back that had some ability as a pass protector, capable catching out of the backfield, which I think Carson Steele is, a physical, kind of back.
He did run a 4.61.
Yeah, it's a little bit faster than 4.77 for sure. Not going to deny that. But it is definitely, it narrows the likelihood that you are going to be a factor when you run as slow as Carson Steele did. But man, there's a lot to like about his tape. There's a lot of like about the attributes that he brings to a running back room. And I'm not ready to count somebody like that out. I think about and I'm not comparing him to Kyron Williams because they're not the same player, but Kyron Williams had an exceptional pass protection profile, had some really good ability as a running back. Actually had a second or third round grade on him coming out of college, but then the 40-yard dash scared me away. And he ran a 4.65 40-yard dash. He's been able to find a significant role and been one of the better backs in football last year. So I think that's just something I'm kind of paying attention to. If the 40-yard dash doesn't matter, then there's a lot to like about his tape. And so
Yeah.
I think there's a chance this team could keep 4 running backs on their roster too. Like that's the other thing is they kept 4 running backs on their roster last year, and who's to say Carson Steele can't be one that sneaks on there?
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, we talked a lot about the speed, and I think it is worth noting that like his explosive testing numbers, like his vertical jump, his broad jump were pretty solid. Like he's not a poor athlete. He's just slow, which is like, it's a weird thing to wrap your mind around.
The funny thing is, I believe he was on the Bruce Feldman's freaks list.
He might have been.
I think Carson Steele wound up on Bruce Feldman's freak list.
He's athletic. Got some big old thighs, out there rocking the short shorts in the Shrine Bowl practice, big old thighs. He was the thigh, him and Bub Means, biggest thighs out there at the Shrine Bowl, and they were letting everybody know. Here's a comp I kind of have for him. If he's going to I think he's going to have to make a transition to fullback or some kind of H-back or something. And this is like ultimate top level. Like if everything works out, this is, I think, the kind of player that you're getting out of him. And maybe he'll never even become this level of blocker. Like that's the biggest thing to go, like as a lead blocker. But do you remember for the Oakland Raiders at the time, Marcel Reese?
Yeah.
Running back, fullback. Like
yes.
Season high carries, I think, was like 50 or something. But he was always part of the receiving game. They put him out there in pass protection or just short yardage. He was never a big part of the run game, even though I'm sure if just given a full workload, he would have been fine in that role. Just, he didn't have that level of speed or anything. So they kind of kept him more around as a fullback, but I think he was even listed as a running back all the time. But like that type of player where he's pretty much just a receiving back in a really big body. Maybe he gets some carries in super short yardage situations because he is powerful, can run low to the ground at just 6 feet. Like he can do some stuff in short yardage, but for the most part, he's there for his blocking and his receiving. And I can see that being kind of the future role for somebody like Carson Steele. I just wonder how far away do you think he would be from ready to contribute in an Andy Reid offense as a receiver and as a pass protector, keeping in mind that I think he's like just turned 21 years old.
Right. And that's the question. Like, can he pick it up mentally? Is he able to, carve a roll out very quickly in light of the running back room and the competition he has? But like Isaiah Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think are the 2 locks. And then you've got Deneric Prince, Keontae Ingram, Louis Rees-Zammit, if we're counting him as a running back when it comes to, if Louis Rees-Zammit makes the roster, I don't think it's keeping a 4th running back as, I don't know, maybe it's technically keeping 5 and finding somewhere else to put him. But Keontae Ingram, Deneric Prince, Carson Steele, Louis Rees-Zammit, Amani Bailey. Like that's the group of players that's kind of competing for RB3, RB4. And so, I see I think there's a path to him making the roster from a special teams perspective. And he had the chops in college. If he's showing that he can be a capable pass protector quickly and he can pick that up, that might be enough to keep him around that in special teams. Like that is a role that this team needs, that they covet. That could be enough to kind of keep him around. I do have some numbers here real quick. He 450 pound bench press, squats almost 700 pounds.
That's a whole lot.
Vertical jump of 35 inches.
It's pretty good.
Fine.
I think it was 37 or something at his pro day, so it got better.
Clocking in at 20.96 miles an hour. It's 21 miles an hour. That's
okay.
It's not 4.7, but it's not 4.5. Or 4, it's somewhere in between there. But yeah. Any other undrafted free agents that you would like to bring to the table today, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, we're just like looking purely from a making this roster standpoint. I think Fabian Lovett from nose tackle from Florida State is one that obviously should jump right out to people because like we're just looking at another big body guy, over 300 pounds. He's actually really tall and then he has really long arms. So that's something that we've seen that Steve Spagnuolo kind of likes out of his defensive out of all of his defensive linemen, but out of his defensive tackles. 6'4", 315 pounds, 35.5-inch arms. Like that's a big guy that takes up a lot of space, not just like with his body, but with his reach. So we're looking at a very thin nose tackle room, right? Like you're talking about Derek Nottie and then Mike Pennell and maybe Neil Farrell becomes something, but like that's kind of, Pennell's a guy that's come on for the Chiefs in big playoff stretch runs, but he's never really been a guy that has had a concrete solidified role through a long period of time. Derek Notty's play has really just kind of wavered up and down year after year. It's not a bad thing. It's just some years it seems like he's really on his A game. And when he's dealing with, he's dealt with some ankles and some hip injuries. And I think that's really messed with not only how he gets in his stance, but how well he can anchor. So like they kind of need some big bodies that can be the long-term solution in that spot. I think that's why they drafted Keandre Coburn last year and day 3 before, he ended up going elsewhere, then coming back, then going elsewhere again. So now Fabian Love is just another guy that I like adding to the mix here. And I think there's actually a decent shot for him to make this team. He just simply has to outperform a Neil Farrell or a Mike Pennell, or I guess Matt Dickerson was signed back to the practice or like back on a contract again. It's like he's got guys in front of him, but nobody that you think, oh, that guy's definitely making the roster instead of him.
Well, Neil Farrell being a guy trying to find somebody for a long-term solution too, because theoretically he's here, he's here for 2 more years. If the Chiefs keep him under contract, keep him on the roster for the next 2 seasons. So yeah, they've kind of piecemealed that one tech and they've performed. I mean, it's been an admirable job. Like it's not been problematic for them entirely at the one tech spot, what they've been doing, grabbing Noddy on 1-year deals and adding Mike Pennell and all that stuff. But yeah, if you can find Fabian Levette and get a guy that has, some club control, some real ability to be that one tech type player, like that makes all the sense in the world. And why is he going drafted? Well, I think there might have been a little bit of injury stuff with him, but also like the one tech devaluation. Like there's a glut of them out there and available more frequently than there ever has been. And sometimes those guys, if you don't have great pass rush ability, you're probably not getting as many opportunities. So this is a guy that could fit a role for the Chiefs, and that's what you're looking at. If you're an undrafted free agent, you've got to find a way to fit a specific role and be undeniable as the best player in that role. And so I think, yeah, like from a niche perspective, I think Fabian Levette makes a ton of sense as a guy that could potentially, be one of those guys that could wind up making the 53-man roster. Like I think at least one does. Like that's pretty typical of this team. At least one winds up making it. I'll give you another one. It's Curtis Jacobs, the linebacker out of Penn State. And man, he's a big guy, like a big athletic guy. So you're looking at a player that they played a lot as an overhang, even though he was 230 pounds, 235. He's playing a lot out in space. He's a guy that they were asking to try to blow up slip screens outside the numbers. They're asking him to do a lot of different things, kind of as an overhang. Played a little bit in the box, didn't look quite as comfortable, I think, as other people. From the box itself, maybe didn't see things as cleanly, didn't process as quickly. But I look at that athletic ability. I look at a little bit of the versatility that he has from a usage perspective at Penn State, and then you look at the special teams value, and that's really what it is. He's the kind of athlete, kind of motor that I think could, supplant a Jack Cochran or a Cam Jones, because I think he's got more athletic upside. He's got more strength and physicality than both of those guys, candidly. And, if he's got the right mentality to come in and earn his role on special teams, that's an intriguing one, because I think the Chiefs coaching staff could be very intrigued by his athletic profile as a defensive contributor potentially down the line, if he can be a more consistent special teams contributor than a Cochran or a Cam Jones.
Yeah, and I think like the big thing, so I think the biggest boon to him making this team is the Chiefs just lost Willie Gay, who was very clearly their fastest, their most athletic linebacker, and not that they couldn't afford to lose him because I think Cam Jones played very well in the limited amount of time he got, or when we saw him fill in there in week 18 at the end of the season, or, because Drew Tranquill played really good. Like they could afford to lose a Willie Gay and Leo Chenal's growth. But I think when you look for a guy that just has this pure athleticism where he can really just open his hips and just run and get out to the flats, he can do things that certain other guys in that position can't. Curtis Jacobs is kind of that guy. I mean, he's not Willie Gay fast, but he still ran a sub 4.6 at 240 pounds. He's big, he's fast. He kind of fits the same mold as Willie Gay. He wasn't, near, I don't think, the prospect that Willie was coming out, but a similar archetype. So if Steve Spagnuolo was sitting there and saying, okay, we have this type of linebacker and this type of linebacker and this type, and now I'm looking kind of in my reserves and I'm looking for somebody that I think can be just this athletic weapon, you're probably not going to Jack Cochran, or you're probably not going to Cole Christensen, or even Cam Jones, who I really like. Like you're probably not going going to those guys if you're just looking for someone that has the most range at a big size. So, like, I do think Curtis Jacobs might have a path to making this 53-man roster. I will say one area where I think it's a little difficult for him, though, is that they really like smart linebackers. That is something that really matters to them, and like guys that understand all of the playbook and everything. And I think that has been a struggle that Curtis Jacobs had all throughout college, was just like really growing on the understanding everything he was seeing aspect. So like it might be a little bit of a learning curve for him at the NFL, especially under Steve Spagnuolo.
They've always had one. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I've been dealing with some cough stuff. I apologize. I've been working through that for like a week now. They always have one that maybe doesn't always fit that bill, though, right, Maddie? I mean, they have the last 4 years. Just saying, maybe they can get away with one.
No, they definitely have. I think when Willie Gay was clearly one of your 3 best or even 2 best at times, you go ahead and do that and just deal with it, right? Because he's that talented. When we're talking about the last guy to make the roster spot, the guy that's only going to play in case of emergency, in case injuries happen, how comfortable do they feel with that being a Curtis Jacobs? And hey, no matter who gets injured here, you're stepping in to play Will or Mike or Sam. That's where I think I maybe am a little bit more hesitant. But yeah, they have in the past, so maybe they do it again. And like that is his avenue to getting in on this roster.
That's a good thought. That is a good thought. Like that's something that they valued. They do value at times from their backup linebackers. Any other undrafted free agents you want to talk about?
I don't think I think that kind of wraps up. I mean, like, okay, we mentioned Carson Steele. I guess we have to go ahead and say Amani Bailey as well. Running back out of TCU. Another very bad athletic tester, but if you watch him play, it just doesn't match. So yep. I don't know. He's shifty. He's explosive when he has the ball. He's not when he's out there testing. He's just a guy to keep an eye on. Maybe he has a great preseason. I think he would have to really, really impress, though, to jump over a Deneric Prince, who was here last year, Keontae Ingram, who I just have a sneaky suspicion that they're kind of higher on than what any of us are thinking. Just the way Brett Veach mentioned it, they are happy that they had him all last year and now through a full camp. So I think it's difficult for him to get over the hump, but he is a guy that at least is at least worth mentioning. Like, I don't know. I don't see more than one of these guys probably making this roster. I mean, it's probably a 1 guy max.
Yep. I think it's 1, maybe 2, but it's probably closer to 1. I'll also throw Miles Battle's name out there as well. Just a tier 1 cornerback athletic tester. The tape's not great, but the athletic profile is. And so, hey, look, that athletic profile is predictive of success. It's like 80% of the ones of, cornerbacks in tier 1 wind up contributing in some meaningful way. So worth paying attention to there. We're going to take a break. We'll be back to talk about the Cleveland Browns right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
All right, I have great news. There's 2 great pieces of news here, Matthew.
Let's go.
First piece of great news is we get to fast forward all the way to week 15 in our season preview.
Of the James stat line tonight.
No, okay. I haven't looked at it yet. Is he 2 of 9 again?
No.
Okay. Anyway, so no, we're all the way into week 15
1 of 3.
Now. Slight improvement. We're all the way into week 3, or week 15, so that's good. We've only got like the other piece of good news is we've only got 1 more week of the NFL season preview on the docket. So next week is our last week doing the season previews. I'm looking forward to just kind of mixing things up a little bit here. It's fun to kind of go through this every single year, but the season previews end after next week. So it's week 15, 16, and 17 because there's some divisional games baked in here too. But we move all the way fast forward to week 15 at Cleveland Browns, a noon game in December. Matthew.
Yeah.
What do you think the quality of the roster is?
Oh, okay. I was wondering what this question was going to be. It's a pretty good roster. The Browns have a pretty good roster, as unfortunate as that may be. And really, it's kind of odd. I mean, like we were going to talk about a couple of the additions that they made, but they didn't add a lot of guys. They kind of are running it back for the most part with the same general roster that they had last year, which was very good until, they lost the playoffs with some quarterback questions. And that is the only thing that really seems to be holding this team back. there are still quarterback questions because Deshaun Watson has kind of been given the reins. Hey, Jameis Winston's lurking in the wings. Maybe we get another Jameis season, but like, if Watson could return to what he was with the Houston Texans, like during his beginning stretch in the NFL, this team is extremely dangerous. Like, it's a phenomenal team that's got a good quarterback, a good coach. They don't really have a lot of holes anywhere on this roster. The problem is I don't think I trust Watson to get to that point, and I don't even know if he is going to be good enough to make them as scary as this overall roster kind of looks on paper.
It's a long time removed from when Deshaun Watson was good at football. It's
not bad. He just has to be not bad, and he's bad.
Yeah. But he's been horrendous. He's been awful basically since everything went down. But this is outside of him, this is a very, very good roster. Like, they have depth at the wide receiver. They have a good offense. They have a very good offensive line. They have depth at tight end. They've got, we haven't even talked about Nick Chubb yet. Like, by the way, they also have one of the best defensive ends, if not the best defensive end in football, in Myles Garrett. So they have blue chip players. They have depth. Denzel Ward. Just you name it. They've got a deep team. They've got a ton of talent. They've got players that they've been able to develop. You're right. It's a great roster, and it's just a ginormous question mark at the quarterback position, which is kind of interesting because they bring in Jameis Winston. And, I look at like Deshaun Watson. If he sucks, Jameis Winston might be able to do some damage with the kind of quality of roster that they have around it. Like, this is that good of a running back or of a team. I'm looking at the running back room now too. It's kind of fun. You got Nyheim Hines in there. You got a little Jerome Ford action behind Nick Chubb too. Like, this is a fun little team. It just you're absolutely right. It all comes down to Deshaun Watson, and even if not, Jameis might cook a little bit with this group. I'm just saying.
I mean, this is definitely a team that, like, if Jameis was forced to step in, if Watson has another injury where they would just like completely have to pull him and put the backup in like they did last year with Flacco, I think this team would be fine with Jameis, just like they were last year with Flacco. Now, you obviously eventually are going to run up into a situation where your quarterback's going to have to make plays, and Joe Flacco just wasn't going to do it enough times in a row last year. Jameis probably won't do it enough times in a row, but there's a chance, though. There's still a chance that he does before he loses the game in a heartbreaking fashion. But this team's really good. I think last year they had some unfortunate injury luck along an offensive line. If anyone can YOLO ball better than Flack, I mean, that's true. They will also love it. They had some bad injury luck last year too. And like, if that returns back to being more stable, like their offensive line outside of Jack Conklin has never really had any injuries. So if these other guys don't get hurt again this year, like Patonio or Wyatt Teller, like if this team stays healthy, they're going to be a very difficult team to beat as long as they don't get bad QB play. Can Watson become just essentially a game manager enough to let the talent of this team take over? That is what the question is going to be.
All right. What do you think the quality of this coaching staff is?
They're also pretty good. Like, I mean, they are a pretty good team. I think Stefanski, has done a really good job for the Browns, kind of organizing it, rebuilding it, and building this team based around what he wants it to be. So I think that is good. Defensively, Jim Schwartz has a great defense for the regular season. I am curious going up against the elite offenses in the playoffs if it's not something you can take advantage of. I think he has shown over the past couple of seasons he's more willing to change than he used to be. He's more willing to go outside of the Jim Schwartz box a little bit. It doesn't always just have to be the same 4-man wide 9 pressure all the time. Like, he will mix things up. However, I think he's not the most, it's not like a Spags. It's not like a Bill Belichick. It's not even like a Big Lou and Arumo. It's not going to be super exotic. It's not going to be super confusing for opposing offenses. They are going to kind of establish, like, this is what we're about to do to you. Can you stop it? And I do think elite offenses come playoff time will have better luck against his style of defense if he doesn't continue to adapt. But still, for the most part, all of the regular season, have a lot of faith in this defense and offensive coaching staff.
I think it's a really good coaching staff. Like, Kevin Stefanski, I think, has consistently done a very good job given the hand that he's been dealt. And he's had to endure and deal with a lot of, like you said, injuries, and he's had to deal with a horrendous quarterback that is severely overpaid and hasn't played well since he's arrived in Cleveland. Ken Dorsey, I think he got scapegoated a little bit to a degree in Buffalo. I'm not entirely sure if I'm entirely out on Ken Dorsey. Yeah, and you said everything. Like, That's a fair assessment of Jim Schwartz. Bubba Ventrone, also a highly regarded special teams coordinator as well. So like this is a quality staff. I don't think the Browns have ever underperformed relative to the situation that they've been given. And that's the thing that is a hallmark, I think, of good coaching is Kevin Stefanski gets the most out of his team. It's just sometimes situationally bad things happen, but he's maintained and been able to stay competitive out there in Cleveland despite dealing with a lot of injuries. And hey, look, Deshaun Watson's also very expensive now too. So like there's also that to take into consideration too. So like I do really like this coaching staff. It sucks that they have Deshaun.
For Ken Dorsey, I think the more I hear about like the Buffalo situation, I think Ken Dorsey was doing smart things for Buffalo. I think he was making them overall, like theoretically, he was making them more potent, more difficult to defend, and better suited for playoff football. The problem was it was bumping up against things that the rest of the offense, specifically Josh Allen, and not in like a bad way, but like bumping into things that were making not necessarily Josh Allen uncomfortable, but not what Josh Allen wanted to do, not what the rest of the offense felt the most comfortable with in the moment. And when you're not winning, when you're not sitting there at 9-0, trying these new things that are going difficult, but when you're battling to stay above 500 and things are going difficult, it is easy to can him. So like, I think he's also going to do just fine here in Cleveland, I think. And it's not like Stefanski's still running the majority of that show anyway, but like, I think he will be fine for the Browns. I think it's a good bring in to replace Alex Van Pelt, who's now off to try to take play calling duties there in New England.
LOL. Give me a new addition, Matthew.
Like I said, they didn't add a ton of guys like to this team. It's a lot of rookies. They kind of brought in a lot of guys back because the team was very good. I am going to go with actually a second round pick, Mike Hall out of Ohio State. He's a 3-tech. He's an undersized pass rusher on the interior. But when you look at this defense and you look at all the things they can do off the side with Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, you even have Agbo Okoronkwo coming off as a reserve. They have a lot of speed. And like last year we saw they kind of had to get a little do a little trickery. They had to get Myles Garrett lined up over centers on the interior. They still struggled to find like a consistent interior pressure. So I think drafting Mike Hall in the second round, I don't know how many snaps he'll play, but if he can give you a couple really good third down interior rush reps to pair with a Garrett, to pair with Smith and everything else, they could go a long way in taking this defense from, hey, it's really, really good and it's really hard to defend, but you can kind of get your thumb on it. Whereas all of a sudden you have 3 guys, maybe 4, depending on the personnel they put out there, that can win one-on-one in any given rep. That starts getting really hard to defend. So I think that if he has a really good rookie year, that defensive line is going to be really dangerous.
Their draft capital depletion does make this offseason really less interesting too, because they didn't have as many draft picks because of some of the. I think they're still paying for Deshaun Watson, if I remember correctly. They didn't have a first round pick this last year. They didn't do much in free agency. One guy that they did add is kind of a situational pass rusher that is kind of a fun add when you look at, like Matty talking about the totality of that defensive line. Quentin Jefferson was a productive interior rusher this last year, had 6 sacks on his ledger, but also plenty of pressure as well. That's just another like kind of rotational piece when you look at, the kind of guys and the kind of bodies that they are able to throw at people and just adding to the depth of that group. That's a nice little piece. So if like you can get some interior pressure with Mike Hall Jr. and Quentin Jefferson, that can be that I would not want to play Cleveland twice a year. Like I would not want to play them twice a year if I'm the Bengals or the Fraud Goals. Or the Ravens.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, the AFC North is a tough division, and this isn't like the old like, oh, it's really cold and they all play physical, so it's tough. No, I mean, like there's actually 3 good teams, and then Mike Tomlin, right? It's like that's a tough draw, and like this team in particular right now, I think they are peaking at the right time from everywhere but quarterback, and it's just such a big question mark. I think the team is good enough. They are getting old along the offensive line. It's a very expensive team too. They have some other defensive players that are about to come up on big contracts as well. This might really be their last run. And they are just completely locked in with Watson. Maybe they get 1 year next year or 2 years, maybe, of keeping the majority of this roster together with a new quarterback if they have to. Like they kind of need this to work out though. I don't know if this core of this team is going to be able to make another run after this Watson year. So there's a lot of pressure on them as well.
All right, players to watch. Give me one.
I'm going with Grant Delpit, actually, safety out of LSU, because here's a guy coming out of college, had this label as being very injury prone and a finesse player that hated contact, never made any tackles, was not willing to do everything that had to be done. It was a guy that was more of in love with being a defensive back, a DB at LSU, more so than a player that was going to make it. Well, guess what? They have turned that completely around. You watch the Browns. Grant Delpit's the guy that does the dirty stuff. It's not Juan Thornhill. It's not anybody. Like, he's the guy that steps down to the box. He's the guy that they asked to run the alley. He's the guy that he is the physical presence of those two safeties right now. And he's been pretty good in that role. I think he's actually gotten better each and every year, coming off of a rookie year where I know he was injured. So, like, I like Delpit's progress through his career as a player that I liked. I could see the vision for him, but he's become a different type of player than I thought he was going to be in the NFL. And if all of a sudden you give them a plus starting safety back there to go along with this entire secondary and that pass rush, and these athletic linebackers, there's not really anywhere you can exploit. Like right now, I would say you still probably want to try the middle of the field a little bit versus Delpit and Thornhill. But if Delpit keeps continuing to take these next steps, that's a big deal for them.
Give me Jerry Jeudy here. Like Amari Cooper has been a very good receiver, even in Cleveland. Despite playing through, some injuries here over the course of his career. Elijah Moore is a solid, contribution in the wide receiver room as well. But if Jerry Jeudy can come in and find some success this year, that is going to be substantial for the odds of the Cleveland Browns to go out and win the AFC North. This is a guy that has incredible talent. He's got first-round talent. He's got wide receiver one ability. He's struggled to stay healthy. He's struggled with drops. He's been an inconsistent player over the course of his career. But even though he's been inconsistent, he's still nearly had 1,000-yard season in his career. Like, he's had some productive years. It just hasn't been able to take that next step. He's kind of been stalled out a little bit. So give me Jerry Jeudy as a player to watch, because he's a guy that can really elevate the ceiling of this team and really help kind of, change the outlook of this team a little bit. Dr. Yeah, go ahead. Dr. McKellips asked the question, toss out the two starting quarterbacks. Who has the best roster right now, the Chiefs or the Browns?
Okay. I mean, let's just kind of systematically work down through it. Who has the better wide receiver group right now? Browns, right? I mean, Amari Cooper's the best player of the bunch. Jerry Jeudy, I don't know who's next. I mean, like Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown, I might take over Jerry Jeudy because I think they're more about football, but then you round it out with like Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman. Like, I don't know. I guess the wide receiver room is a little bit closer than I wanted to think initially, but I think Amari Cooper being the best guy gives them the edge there.
I'd give him a slight nod, but it's pretty close, which is comforting. I think you probably give the nod to the Browns in a vacuum for 2024.
Yeah, and I think the Chiefs could find better ways to use like a Jeudy and Elijah Moore, guys like that. Offensive line's pretty easily for the Browns. Like, I don't think it's particularly close. Like, it's a really good unit when everyone's healthy. Tight end, I'm still going to say the Chiefs.
It's the Chiefs. Moving on.
I just want to say David Njoku, though, is coming off his best year. Like, he's clearly just gotten better and better in the NFL. Like, he is working his way to being in the tier that is right below where Travis Kelce is in the NFL. So it's not like a crushing victory that it would have been 2-3 years ago, especially if we don't know if it was injury or his age last year that slowed him down. Running back, Browns, big win. Defensive line in totality, How do you factor that out?
Browns. I give it to the Browns. I mean, they both, like the Chiefs and the Browns, both have a blue chip player. I like the complementary pieces for Cleveland and their depth a lot better than I like with the Chiefs. So, like I would take the Browns defensive line.
I forgot they had Maurice Hurst too, who had finally played a little bit last year.
Yeah, I mean they got a lot of.
I was trying to give like a little bit of like, is Chris Jones enough to pull this close? But then like Myles Garrett is better than Chris Jones, but at the very least washes it out. And then you just look at everything else. And I think just like the Browns just have guys on guys on guys that kind of matter. Linebackers, that's an easy Chiefs win, I think, even though it's not like the Browns are bad there, but I think it's still an easy Chiefs win.
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah came on last year, so he's playing a lot better. But yeah,
he is, but you still have to protect him. You still can't let him get run at just because of his size. Secondary as a whole, the Browns just have less questions. And just argue, I love Trent McDuffie. There's a chance by the end of it, he's the best cornerback of all this, but Denzel Ward's a phenomenal corner. He's a clear-cut cornerback one as is. So I can't sit here and say with a straight face that Trent McDuffie's definitely better than Denzel Ward. And then I comparing Greg Newsome and Martin Emerson to Williams and Watson, that's an easy win at corner. Safety is where I do think the Chiefs maybe make up a little ground, but know if it's just like a slam dunk. Because like I said, I think Grant Delpit is playing really well, and Juan Thornhill is still like a quality NFL starter. So like I didn't tally this all up. It seems like just overall the Browns have a better roster than the Chiefs. I feel pretty comfortable saying that outside quarterback.
It's not like a giant edge, but it's
No.
like this is one of the best rosters outside of quarterback in the National Football
Yeah.
League.
No, it
Literally
really
one
is.
of the best. And there's
I
some
will say
depth there
this though.
too.
Oddly, the Chiefs, I think, are better set up long-term than the Browns are, despite they're the back-to-back Super Bowl champions, but I think they're better set up long-term because they are kind of younger in some of the spots that are going to be super vital and important for them. I mean, the Browns are young in the secondary, which is helpful for that. Like they are still young there, but a lot of the other pieces are veterans. A lot of other position groups that we went through are a little bit older guys, and the Chiefs are a little bit younger and all those. So the Chiefs have the youth advantage, but I mean, I do think the Browns have a noticeable but not significant edge in the roster outside QB.
How do they beat the Chiefs?
Physical. They control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Their offensive line is the type of offensive line that can take advantage of a team that doesn't maybe have a great nose tackle, that has a Chris Jones who maybe doesn't want to sell out to play the run every single play in this game. They get these big offensive linemen up to the second level and take on Nick Bolton head on, Drew Tranquill head on, which is not where they're their best. We've seen the Browns over the years, they've run a lot of different stuff. They run a lot of traps. They do a lot of pulls. And we've seen when the Chiefs play the Bills, they have a lot of success pulling guys play side, like pulling a play side guard out around the edge and getting to the second level. They do a good job getting good angles on the Chiefs linebackers. The Browns are a team like just built to do that on offense. And then defensively, you just have a defensive front that completely takes over a game, takes advantage of a, young, inexperienced left tackle. Maybe you don't get a great Trey Smith game on the interior. Jawan Taylor gets in some, penalty trouble or whatever it have been because it's a tough matchup. Like I could see an avenue where the Browns just completely control both trenches in this game. And that kind of puts the Chiefs behind the 8 ball a little bit. And then Watson or Jameis Winston at the time just doesn't do anything to lose the game.
Yeah, I mean, it still falls on Deshaun to a degree, because if he's protecting the football, capably and making a few plays here or there, or just at least giving his playmakers a chance to make some of these plays, the Browns can be sneaky good. Like, and like I was looking at some odds to win the division this year, and like it was like Baltimore plus 145, Cincy plus 150, and then the Browns were like plus 630, and I was just like, that's tempting right there. Those Cleveland odds are tempting right there, just because like I think this is a team like this is a team that can in a vacuum beat the Chiefs. Some of these weeks we make jokes about this, like last week with the Panthers, but like this is a team that can legitimately hang with the Chiefs. It just kind of comes down to what happens at the quarterback position a little bit.
And what week was this game?
15.
Yeah, that's a week where the Chiefs are going to 100% go out there and play a preseason offensive game plan versus an AFC playoff contender.
Probably.
This is the yearly loss to the Fraudgles, right? Where they play them late in the year. The Chiefs trot out there and just run the most bland preseason-esque offense that they can, because they're not about to Andy's not about to show anybody that they might play in the playoffs something real. So like that this game reeks of that already, actually.
Who's the Chiefs non-Mahomes MVP?
I mean, we gave some credit to this linebacker group, but I don't think they still have anybody that can defend Travis Kelce, but I'm not going to go with him. I think a guy, we've picked him some throughout this whole thing, but I don't think we've picked him enough. And like so closer the season gets, the more I kind of think as long as he's healthy, he's going to have a huge role in this team. I'm going to go with Hollywood Brown. It's a tough matchup. Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward are both fast guys. They can both run. Right. So it's not like he's just going to be running by some slow corners, or even if you get him against Martin Emerson, they have guys that can run on the outside. So you're not just going to be running by him, but I think that also means they might have faith. And this is a Jim Schwartz defense. They might have faith in their cover guys being able to cover him. And I think that's dangerous for a guy like Brown, who does have some actual skill at the position as a route runner and stuff. So I think this could be a big Hollywood Brown game. I think we might get to this point of the year and people are like, whoa, Hollywood Brown's stat line or his impact on the game has been a lot better than I even thought, because of how well like that just connection with Mahomes might go, the bringing back the deep ball. So I haven't picked him enough for these. I am going with Hollywood Brown. It's a difficult matchup of corners, I think, for him, but that might mean he gets a lot more one-on-one opportunities. And like with his speed, that's just a dangerous job for anybody.
I'll pick the entirety of the linebacking core. I'll just go with the entire starting linebacker core, because like this is a offensive style with the run game, with a very good run game that can try to get you, stretching wide, but also the play action behind it that can really stress linebackers. and this is a challenge. This is the kind of team that can really challenge that. So Drew Tranquill, Nick Bolton, they will be tested. You talk about some of these bigger offensive linemen be able to climb up to the second level and be physical with those guys. I talk about like Bolton and Tranquill specifically because they're going to see the field a lot more. They're going to have to really be good about slipping blocks. They're going to have to be able to, get off blocks and make plays on a Nick Chubb and match the physicality of Nick Chubb when they get there. But then they're also going to have to be mindful of, David Njoku working behind him a little bit, in the middle of the field, and Amari Cooper working in the middle of the field a little bit as well. So I think it's a big game for those linebackers, and they got to step up. Guess the line real quick. You got that's in Cleveland. What do you think?
But you said it's on the road?
In Cleveland. Yep.
Okay. I think the Chiefs are actually going to have the Chiefs regular season is going to be good enough that by this time of the year, everyone's going to be seeing them as the Super Bowl favorites. Like these past few years, it's always been like this team's the favorite, that team's the favorite, but you can't rule out the Chiefs till they're actually gone. I think this year the Chiefs are going to have a good year from start to finish. So I think they will be riding high. However, I do think it being in Cleveland makes it a little tight. I think bookmakers are still going to be a little scared to make Chiefs full on underdogs. So I'll go Chiefs -1.5. And my over under for you being muted was set at 0.5. So I just won big.
I'll go Chiefs -3.5. That's going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you. We love you. We'll catch you later.